Welcome to the 700 Club. Roger Stone made headlines after President Trump commuted his prison sentence over the weekend. But there's a side to Stone's story that you won't hear anywhere else, with a twist that will surprise you. CBN News' David Brody brings us this exclusive interview with Roger Stone.
Now that Roger Stone is no longer going to jail, he has quite a few people to thank. Of course, Donald Trump right at the top of the list. But spiritually speaking, he has someone even greater than Trump to thank, and that is Jesus Christ.
So how did this come about? Well, about 6 months ago, in the middle of all of his legal troubles, Roger Stone attended an outdoor prayer service in Florida, led by Franklin Graham. Stone tells me he was desperate, struggling, stressed out. Graham had met with him before the event, and that night, Stone made his move.
At that moment, I felt the calling. I stood up with 500 other people. I wasn't the slightest bit embarrassed. I confessed that I was a sinner. I repeated a pledge that he recited, and it was as if a cement block was lifted off my chest. I can't even explain it.
Stone says it gave him security about his future.
I was never scared, and I was never worried. I was completely confident that the Lord would guide the president to do the right thing.
For decades, the provocateur enjoyed a reputation as the bad boy of politics. Then came convictions of lying to Congress and obstructing a congressional investigation into Trump's 2016 presidential campaign.
I don't regret anything that I did in 2016 because I didn't break the law. They wanted me to lie, to bear false witness against the president in return for some kind of leniency.
Most would expect Stone to be on the warpath against his enemies. But now, despite anger against prosecutors that he says were dishonest and politically motivated, Stone says he's on a new path.
Here's the big difference, David.
Yeah.
In the old days, I would have wanted revenge. I would have wanted to take revenge against every one of them. But now I realize that vengeance is God's. It's not mine. I no longer am obsessed with, the Sicilian concept of revenge, which generally speaking is a dish that tastes best when eaten cold.
Still, Stone couldn't resist putting what he's been through in spiritual terms.
I really do believe that those who are trying to undo this president, those who are trying to destroy me, trying to destroy Michael Flynn, who's a very good man and a great American patriot, war hero, I do believe they're satanic. They cut corners, and what's outrageous is their arrogance, their moral superiority, when in fact they have no morals at all. I don't believe that any of these people involved in my prosecution are really believers in God.
CBN News reached out to former members of the special counsel's office about Stone's satanic remark. The spokesman declined comment. When it comes to Stone, however, one thing hasn't changed.
I can guarantee you I don't intend to become boring.
But still, he has regrets.
I do regret the fact that it took this long for me to return to the church, because I realized that, I could have had the solitude and the solace and the strength and the fortitude to fight this much earlier. I went through a year of hell before I found the way.
Will he find the way to pray for his enemies?
The Lord will deal with them. So it's not like they will go unpunished. That makes it easier to pray for them for when that moment comes.
As for Stone's immediate future, he wants to help re-elect President Trump, this time from his perch on the outside. As for his purpose going forward, he's waiting on God.
I think God put me in this position at this time for a purpose. So if God has a mission for me, he hasn't revealed it to me yet, but if he does, I'm ready for duty.
And he can expect a lot of eyes will be on him. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, David. I have been so amazed at the faux affront that is being shown by Nancy Pelosi and Mitt Romney, people like that this pardon was so horrible. Let me just show you for the number of pardons that have been given. President Trump has 36 pardons. Barack Obama had 1,927. Bill Clinton had 459, just to get them in perspective. But here are the people. Now get this. Bill Clinton pardoned financier Mark Rich. He had been number 6 on the government's list of most wanted fugitives. he pardoned his own brother for distributing cocaine, and he commuted the sentences of convicted terrorists. Barack Obama commuted the sentences of Oscar Lopez Rivera. Rivera was a leader of a Marxist group. It was once the most dangerous terrorist group in the U.S. It set off more than 130 bombs. And he also commuted the sentence of Chelsea Manning, a U.S. Army soldier who provided classified documents to WikiLeaks. And what Trump has done with Roger Stone is absolutely perfectly in order. It's in his power. And for the people to sound this alarm, it just makes me sick in my stomach. But think of that, 38 pardons by Trump, 1,927 by Obama, Clinton 459, including pardoning his own brother for cocaine possession. Whew. You know, this thing, it shows, though, there's a hunger in our society for something better, for righteousness. And, you know, I have a book that we introduced yesterday called I Walk with a Living God. And people are just so hungry for a moral standard. They're just desperately seeking. And you read the book?
I've read the book, and what they'll love is the miracles and the power, to see the power of God demonstrated in one person's life. And you were a new believer, and you were just, and so we get to walk along with you as you're learning how to walk with God. And it's so, it's you can't put it down. It's such a faith builder. And you realize God is no respecter of persons.
Exactly.
And that what he did for you, he can do for all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's the unvarnished truth, and I'm happy to report that the results, it has been 1 or 2 on Amazon, faith books, Christian faith, and it's moving up in terms of sales. I'm very pleased to see.
I loved your first memoir that you wrote about 25 years ago. Lots happened since then. So this has that plus all the details that I love details, and especially when it comes to God and answered prayers.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating. So if you haven't gotten Pat's new book yet, it is wonderful.
I walk with a living God. I'm just hoping it'll touch many, many lives. Well, in other news, a potential vaccine for the coronavirus is ready for the final phase of testing. Why are scientists encouraged by the data so far? John Jessup explains that.
Thanks, Pat. Tests on a potential vaccine are showing promising results as the biotech company Moderna releases data from a phase 1 clinical trial. It shows that all 45 people who took the shots developed antibodies needed to fight the virus at a level 4 times greater than those found in patients who've recovered from an infection. Scientists point out there's still no evidence that antibodies create immunity or for how long. However, one said these are the kind of results that you want to see from an early trial. Moderna is set to begin the 3rd and final phase of trials later this month, aiming for 30,000 participants. The company says it hopes to distribute 500 million doses a year starting in 2021. And that's welcome news, with cases skyrocketing across the country. More than 3.4 million Americans are infected with COVID-19, with at least 38 states now seeing a resurgence in cases. Florida saw its deadliest day Tuesday with more than 130 virus-related deaths. In Texas, hospitals are running low on ICU beds, antiviral medication, and personnel. The head of the CDC says he fears the situation will get worse before it gets better.
I do think the fall and the winter of 2020 and 2021 are going to be probably one of the most difficult times that we've experienced in American public health.
Dr. Anthony Fauci says he hopes life can get back to normal soon, but by soon, he clarified that he meant at least 12 to 18 months. Well, in the early days of the pandemic, the nation of Israel was hailed as a model in fighting COVID-19. But now, a second wave is causing havoc, including record high unemployment and protests in the streets. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell explains from Jerusalem.
In Jerusalem Tuesday night, several thousand demonstrators both rioted and protested the government's handling of the COVID-19 crisis. Just days ago, thousands of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv to protest the government's lack of support for Israelis out of work.
We are not working already nearly 5 months, and unfortunately most of us have not received any compensations from the Israeli government. And this is really a tragedy. That's mean how you can feed your family and pay your employees after 5 months with zero income.
In an attempt to stop the economic bleeding, Prime Minister Netanyahu promised relief.
I directed the immediate establishment of a joint forum, roundtables, together with the self-employed and with the business owners, so that we can resolve the problems.
The economic problems are daunting. Israel is experiencing an unemployment rate of more than 20%, and one of its main industries, tourism, is among the hardest hit. You can see the evidence driving around Jerusalem, where dozens of tourist buses sit parked. Hotels remain closed, and many tourist shops are shuttered. So how did Israelis go from a shining example of handling COVID-19 in April to today? Some believe it's simply because Israelis didn't follow the 3 requirements for reopening: wearing face masks, maintaining social distance, and personal hygiene. Since then, daily cases have risen from just double digits to more than 1,000. Tuesday saw a record of more than 1,700 new cases. The crisis has led to a shortage of the drug remdesivir and a threat of a nationwide strike by the nurses' union, who say they're overworked. One Israeli official said the country is one step from a full lockdown, while some hard-hit areas have been quarantined.
We respect those decisions because for us, a life is a life, and it's not just another number, and we want to make sure that everybody's safe at home.
The government also sent mixed messages. For example, when the Knesset overruled the cabinet for its closures on pools and gyms. All this has led to a dramatic fall in the polls for Netanyahu. In April, 30% of Israelis were unhappy with his handling of the crisis. Now that poll has doubled to 61%. Meanwhile, on an optimistic note, United Airlines announced it will open a new route from Chicago to Tel Aviv starting this September. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat?
Well, you wouldn't think they'd be having this kind of trouble, but that's what happens. This virus is just deadly, and it doesn't respect any religion or any group of people. Well, we encourage you to pray for Israel during this pandemic. We have a free booklet to help you. It's called How You Can Pray for Israel During the Coronavirus Pandemic. Just call the number on your screen, 800-700-7000, and we'll give you a free copy. And we think we should.